Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of my favourite people and some of the world's biggest stars. And we've got two for you today. The Feeling have got mega hits that I love to play on the radio and that you love to listen to. And they're back on tour this autumn from October the 14th, starting in Dublin through Cardiff to Norwich, Bexhill, Northampton, Birmingham, Glasgow, Newcastle, Manchester, Leeds, Bristol, Oxford and London O2 Shepherd's Bush on Friday, the 2nd of November 2018. The Feeling are back on the road, and I'm delighted to say that Dan and Richard are with us now. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, but you got me into a lot of bother over the years. I remember once being on BBC Radio Shropshire, and I opened my show with Love It When You Call, and a boss came in and said, could you turn it down a bit? It's a bit raunchy for our radio station. Then I went to another station, and they don't like it very much, but they're perfect radio songs. Did you have that in mind when you wrote them?
No, not really. We just made the album that we wanted to hear. You know, we made the kind of album that was the kind of music we wanted to listen to, really. You know, just a bunch of lads playing music together and
just inspired by those sort of old records.
But I suppose that we all grew up with Radio Generation. We grew up listening to radio. You know, we grew up with FM radio, and I suppose the stuff we heard on the radio when we were kids was Queen and, you know, kind of great radio pop music. So it's probably just kind of filtered in that way.
Something like Love It When You Call, that drum beat at the beginning is genius for radio, and I guess live it's the same. There's something about the pounding of that drum beat that moves our heart, isn't there?
It's kind of builds tension. That's the idea. You know, but you know something's coming, you know. And it's kind of the kind of thing we just played. It wasn't even like you just, when you're making music, you're just following in your instincts, you know. You're just following whatever you feel like you want to do, and you just go, okay, let's do this. And there's not a lot of overthinking going on. You're just making music, you know, and you know, it's then the craft comes into finishing off a record and making it sound the way you want it to sound and all that kind of stuff. And 12 Stops and Home came very naturally to us. It was our first album, and there was no expectations and no pressure on us. It was just five guys geeking out, you know, being musicians, making a record.
We're talking today to Dan Gillespie Sells, double barrel name, which means he's posh, and Richard Jones, less so. I look at your
not posh.
I look at your CV and when you started and the Brit School and that sort of period. I mean, the 90s was such a fabulous time. I think we're about the same age, all three of us, and that sort of Chris Evans on Radio 1 period was so exciting for music. I mean, did that give you a momentum too?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, that was our formative years, and we were growing up at the time. It's actually interesting because Dan and me were talking about when Absolute Radio 90s was launched, however many years ago, and for some reason we know every song that they play, even the menswear B-sides. It's like all the weirdest stuff. It sort of all permeates through when you're a teenager, and I think we were kind of lucky enough that we sort of came of age with our band in that mid-noughties, which was like a sort of like second wave of Britpop. I always think of it was when bands sort of came back onto the radio again, having not been on. There was a bit of a pop period before that with boy bands and things.
Yeah.
And that, but we grew up with that, like, you know, pop music, but guys or girls with guitars and singing harmonies, and it being quite sophisticated as well, that sort of sophisticated writing.
And it felt so exciting, didn't it? That period felt like it mattered. It's somehow now with the charts, I don't care. Is that because I'm an old geezer, or is that because the business has changed and the charts are virtually irrelevant?
Well, unfortunately, we're old geezers as well, so we can't really, it's quite hard to be objective.
You have to be careful though, don't you? Because I found myself not wanting to turn into a cliched, ranty old man about how everything's not like it used to be. But I really think it isn't as good.
Yeah, I feel like there's not much imagination. I'm expecting more imagination from
I'm just talking about in the mainstream, like top streaming charts or whatever that is now. The top 40, there's great music being made out there.
Yeah, of course.
But the thing that seems to be permeating the A-lists of Radio 1 and that sort of, you know, what kids are listening to predominantly, a lot of it to me doesn't inspire me at all. And I don't think it's just because I'm old, but maybe it is. Who knows?
Could be.
It's also the sound of it, isn't it? I'm in Vegas at the minute doing some taping, and I was driving in a taxi listening to iHeart, which seem to own everything in America, and they all just sound the same at the moment. There's some production or there's some way they're doing it, whereas I guess the guys that are basically fundamentally vocals, bass, guitar, keyboards, that's never going to be the case because you've got to use the notes of the piano, haven't you?
Radio goes through phases and things go through phases, and the world is constantly evolving, and I think the great thing about it is that because of the streaming services and various things, young people don't really, they'll get their music from everywhere. And they'll get their music from listening to 70s, 80s, 90s pop. They'll listen to everything. And that's really lovely, actually, because I've got a younger brother. He's 10 years younger than me. His music taste is so eclectic. It's not based on what he's being fed by Radio 1 or anything. It's just basically whatever he finds online. And he's listening to vintage music. There's like a whole cave of beautiful old music out there that none of us have ever heard. You know, there's so much you can do to find new sounds and new music, and sometimes it's something that was recorded 50 years ago that suddenly kind of rears its head and everyone goes, oh, that's amazing, you know. And I love that, you know, I love that about music, you know. There's always something to be discovered.
And it's interesting as well, isn't it? In our day, if you got something viral, you ended up in bed for 3 days. Now when it goes viral, it can go around the world and it changes everything. Literally one click in the right place, and I guess your music will live forever for that reason.
Well, yeah, and actually I was talking about that Childish Gambino video that did that last weekend. Like, went up on a Saturday, and then by Monday had 40 million views or something like that. Yeah. But because there's something like brilliant, it's a brilliant piece of art. That video, the way the song and the video together are something that's really interesting and really well done. And I love the fact that that can happen. It doesn't need anyone even promoting it. It's just people going, you got to see this. This is kind of cool, and it's that I find very positive and very exciting that can happen now.
Yeah, absolutely. And certain things will find their way. They'll find their way to the top, you know. Tell
me about the sexiest year of your career. I mean, late 2005 seems to have been a big period for you. When did you know you'd made it and that suddenly you were in your eyes at the top?
Did you say sexiest year?
Sexiest year. I think
right now I'm feeling pretty sexy.
Do you know what? 2006... the album came out at the beginning of 2006, and suddenly the gigs that we were doing that used to just have our mates, if we were lucky, or just nobody out, you know, playing to the T-shirt girls who were selling your T-shirts, and, you know, that was it, you know. Those gigs suddenly were full of people, and then before you knew it, you're playing at a festival and everyone's singing your music back at you. And that's sort of like a kind of watershed moment, because you realise, oh, okay, it's connecting. You know, not only have we been played on the radio, but people are learning these songs and singing back to us. And that was a real shift for us, I think. And that all happened in 2006. Beginning of that year, nobody knew who we were. End of that year, everyone did. And it was, you know, we'd already had 2 #1 radio records and another to follow. And then, you know, the album just seemed to sustain. It just seemed to keep giving, you know, more and more hits and stuff. So it was a real moment. And then as soon as that happened, we flew off to America, and we went back to playing tiny venues in America, you know, and building it up in America and that. So it's a weird old life, you know, when you go from playing empty gigs to suddenly being able to sell out big theatres, and you just have to kind of go with it. Going on top of the pops and stuff like that the first time, you know, all those kind of like little watershed moments, they're the bits that are important and feel magical. But also at the time, we'd kind of were quite realistic, because we were already in our mid-20s and we'd already been session guys for a while. We'd already had record deal that fell through when we were teenagers. We were already a lot older than a lot of the artists that had already had careers before us. You know, we're actually slightly older then than was normal for a band that were breaking. So we weren't completely unrealistic about it. But there's still a lot of, looking back at 12 Stops and Home, there's still a lot of memories and a lot of, you know, part of what we wanted to do this tour for, to play 12 Stops and Home live, was to kind of honour that how important that time was for us, you know. And it's 12 years since 12 Stops and Home came out, so why not do it now? And
I do believe the greatest compliment of success is survival. I mean, just still being here proves that you've made it. That's got to be brilliant, because they don't all survive, do they?
Yeah.
We never fell out was one of the big things. Yeah,
that was the thing.
We always carried on enjoying making music.
What is that? Are you so boring and inane between each other that you've got no passion? What is it? Why are you still friends?
We shake hands at the beginning of every day. Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. How are you doing? Cup of tea? Yes, please. 1 sugar.
No, I think it's because we all met when we were 16. We were so young.
We've been mates for 10 years before we started the band.
But we didn't really get the band properly going and signed to a major. And it was actually probably the 3rd band that we'd done, but we didn't get it right and get it signed until we were in our mid-20s. So we already had 10 years of struggle and living together and working together. So I think that if you're, signed when you're 18 straight out of school or college and you've been with a band, because it often happens that you're with a bunch of guys who've been working together for 4 or 5 months and then you're suddenly travelling the world, you don't really know. It's like dating someone, isn't it? You don't really know how well you're going to get on until you put under pressure. So we'd already
It's
been...
like that TV programme where they get married.
Married at first sight.
I prefer the naked one myself. I want to see private parts before I move in with you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's have a
well,
look.
we'd been through all of the private part stuff.
Yeah, we've seen each other's private parts. That's how...
That was all out.
Those premiere inns in Wigan, they can be fun nights, can't they?
Oh, yeah. We've seen it all.
Absolutely.
Kebabs all over the floor.
No, never mind bloody premiere. That was when you all lived together at uni. These
Oh, God, yeah. It was like the young ones.
Goodness, like the young ones.
Towers of pizza boxes.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
So the only way was up.
And also, you know what? I think unlike younger bands, I think we also appreciated... because it was our second attempt as well.
Yeah, we realised what was happening was extraordinary, and it was literally living.
We weren't going to take it for granted,
Yeah, we were living childhood dreams, and we weren't going to be like, let's kind of ruin this because I want to be closer to the front than this guy, or why don't we use my songs or something like that.
We weren't going to let egos get in the way of the success. It was like more important that the band survive.
And we just allowed Dan to have the ego, which was the...
Well, because I was always going to win in the end.
Yeah. Well, talking of which, I'm gonna fluff his ego a bit. I'm from Nottingham, and I went up to Sheffield to see a little play about a year or so ago called Jamie, and I just went to see it again in the West End, and it is one of the most beautiful shows I've ever seen. Well done, Dan. It is truly beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very proud of it. Yeah, very proud of it. And we're delighted. The Cast album came out just recently, and it's just so lovely to have. That's going to be there forever. I mean, I hope the show lasts. I hope the show carries on in the West End as long as it can. But to know that Cast album will always be there, you know what I mean? It's not going anywhere. It's there.
And you never know when you pick a subject like that. You don't know whether it's going to find its audience, whether the critics are going to like it or hate it. I just saw a show last week. I gave it 5 stars. Mark Shenton said it was the worst thing he'd ever seen. It's only opinion, isn't it?
What you have to do is tell your story and hope that you do a good job, and and hope for the best. And we would try to be as honest and as truthful as possible to the people of Sheffield, to the story, to the characters, and make it just something that people just were going to enjoy more than anything else. It's a fun night at the theatre.
What's the name of that 11 o'clock number with the lady who sings it in the second act? It is one of the most beautiful moments.
Oh, it's called He's My Boy, and Josie Walker sings it incredibly. So if anyone hasn't seen it yet, get down there, because she's not in the show forever. She gets recast fairly soon, and so I'm trying to get everyone to go and see Josie sing that song live, because it's a real moment, isn't it?
Everybody's talking about Jamie on in the West End, and then The Feeling will be touring the UK from October 14th. Dublin, Cardiff, Norwich, Bexhill, Northampton, Birmingham, Glasgow, Newcastle, Manchester, Leeds, Bristol, Oxford, finishing in London O2 Shepherd's Bush on the 2nd of November. I really love talking to you, Dan and Richard. It's been a pleasure, and keep the hits coming, and good luck with the tour. Thank you for your time.
Cheers, thank
mate.
you. Bye-bye.